Hello, this is Ed Chapman, and this video cast is going to focus on one aspect of ecosystems, and that's the idea of biodiversity. Excuse me. Biodiversity is simply a measurement of how many different kinds of plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, whatever, that you find living in a certain ecosystem or in a certain environment at a point in time. And generally, the higher the biodiversity measurement of an ecosystem, the healthier that ecosystem is considered to be. So when biodiversity decreases or falls because things are going extinct, then a lot of times that means that ecosystem is in trouble or is being stressed in some way that's harming the overall health of the food webs that make up the biotic part of that ecosystem. A good example of a high diversity ecosystem is a coral reef. And if you look at this picture here, you'll see this coral reef has at least 3 different kinds of fish. So our fish biodiversity count is 3. Let's see, look at all the different corals. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 different types of coral animals, different colors, different shapes. There's probably lots of invertebrates like shrimp. Oh, here's a snail here. So I see a snail count. I see at least one kind of snail. So we could say just real quick, the biodiversity count of this picture is 8. Okay. So maybe if you come back a year from now and you go to this exact same part of the coral reef and you only see one kind of fish and there's only one kind of coral surviving and the snail's completely gone, you can see that the biodiversity has decreased to 2. And so it's obvious, but it's probably going to mean that that ecosystem is in trouble in some way. Here's an example of a low biodiversity ecosystem, a cornfield. Unfortunately, or fortunately for the people that rely on these things for food, humans like to plant fields with all the same thing. And this is called a monoculture. All right. This makes it really easy for the farmer. He can plant everything at once, fertilize everything at once, and harvest everything at once. And because the fields are so big, he can use really, really big machinery to do this. Some farm machinery is magnificently huge, the size of this stuff, but they can make a lot of profit with just a few people working here, bringing everybody to pick the crop, for example, at the same time. So monocultures are easy. Back in the Middle Ages and earlier, people grew small little plots of lots of different types of things because you never knew what was going to make it and what didn't make it. If your potatoes died one year but the carrots did really well, you'd eat carrots that winter. We really don't have to worry about that so much anymore because a lot of our food comes from big grocery stores, and grocery stores get the food from all over the planet. So monocultures make sense because our farmers have to feed a lot of people today. Most people don't grow their own food. But the effect on the environment is these vast farmlands have very low biodiversity. There are very few butterflies or insects or mammals that could live in a cornfield. There's just nothing for them to eat. Extinction reduces biodiversity by eliminating populations. So as populations are eliminated, the food webs that they're a part of start to collapse and break. Pretty obvious if we look at some examples here. Biodiversity is connected to succession. If you guys remember, secondary succession starts with a sudden decrease in biodiversity. For example, if a forest fire comes through and eliminates all the large trees and bushes and plants growing in a forest, we still have the soil, and there are still things under the soil that can grow from seeds, but we've experienced a massive decrease in biodiversity. So there is a connection between succession and the number of species living in an ecosystem. If we look at a food web here, pretty easy one to understand here. I like to think of this as the Lion King food web. Although there isn't a lion in this picture, the top apex predator is a cheetah, which is a spotted cat. It's found today mainly in Africa and a few parts of the Arabian Peninsula, but not very much anymore. And the cheetah is feeding on zebra. Okay, everybody knows what zebra are. The zebra, of course, are eating the grass, the green plants in the area. We've got hyenas maybe feeding on the zebras every now and then. Elephants eating the trees and also feeding on the grass, and termites feeding on the grass. And, of course, scavengers picking the bones of the things that die. So what's going on here with this food web? Well, if the cheetah goes extinct, imagine that we eliminated the cheetah. All right, so all the cheetahs are gone. Now the zebras are missing a predator, so that means more of their babies are going to survive. Cheetahs go after the easiest things to catch, so they tend to hunt the young zebra. With more babies surviving, more of the zebras are going to be surviving to adulthood and maybe overgrazing the grass. Okay, if all the grass is eaten, then the wind can get to the soil and start to blow it around, and the zebra are going to start to starve to death because they're going to experience a famine. So as you can see, if you take one species out, you might think, oh wow, that's good for the ecosystem because the big bad predator is gone. But no, that's not true. The zebra actually are healthier as a species with a predator keeping them in check. It keeps them from eating up all their food and their population's growing too large. Another example from a food web is the concept of a keystone species. And you may have heard of krill. Krill are these little tiny, they're about maybe 2 or 3 centimeters long at the largest rather. They live in cold water. They're a type of shrimp. And lots of organisms feed on krill. Squid eat it, fish eat it, seals, a couple different types of seals here, whales that have baleen instead of teeth. Okay, so as you can see, this krill is food for a lot of these organisms. All right, it's pretty much the only way energy can get from the plant part of the plankton, otherwise known as phytoplankton, up to these higher levels in the trophic pyramid. So as you can see, if we eliminate the krill, if the krill goes extinct, then all of these populations that depend on krill for food energy, are going to suffer and maybe go extinct because of it. This is something people are worried about today because of global warming. Krill can only live in cold water, and if ocean waters heat up too much, krill populations are definitely going to come down. What effect is it going to have on Arctic and Antarctic animals and birds that feed on krill? Nobody knows. The experiment is running right now. Finally, human activity. Probably the number one reason why biodiversity on the whole planet is decreasing is because of people. There's a lot more people today. I think the last time I checked, we're up to over 7 billion humans on the planet. And that's probably going to double in the next 20 to 50 years if things keep going the way they go. And humans, of course, need space, so they're going to develop and deforest areas. People like energy, and people like to make things. That creates pollution. I talked about monocropping earlier, or monocultures, where it's really economical to feed a lot of people by growing a lot of the same thing on very, very large acreage farms. And to keep these things going, we're relying a lot on chemicals, pesticides, to kill weeds and to kill insects. So all of these aspects of human activity can cause populations of animals and plants to decrease. So we definitely are losing biodiversity just because there's more and more people. To counter this, humans, we feel bad about it, so a lot of people put a lot of effort and a lot of money into conservation. And these are primarily oriented towards preserving species that are close to extinction. I'm quite sure everybody's heard about how rare pandas are. The Washington Zoo is lucky enough to have just had a new panda cub born a couple weeks ago, a cute little thing. But pandas probably would be extinct by now if it weren't for the work of a lot of American, European, and Chinese organizations working to breed these animals in zoos. As far as I know, pandas are not being re-released into the wild, though. A lot of other animals have been successfully bred in zoos and then released into the wild. For example, black-footed ferrets, whooping cranes, California condors. All these animals have come really close to extinction, and if it weren't for captive breeding or zoo breeding and reintroduction of the babies into the wild, we would have lost these species. And finally, we do, when we can, set apart natural areas to preserve the ecosystems for animals to live in. And you know these as nature preserves, parks, national forests, and things like that. They're expensive. People can't develop them. There's always people that want to develop these resources. So it's nice that conservation is at least trying to mitigate or reduce some of the effects that humans have had on the planet. All right, thanks for listening, and that's the end of this podcast.